Alright, good morning YouTube. This is Nick with NK Landscaping again as usual, and today I'm going to go over something pretty cool. I'm going to do the pros and cons of putting a tilt rotator on a 3-ton excavator. So this review is going to encompass nearly 4 years of ownership, 1,330 hours we've put on this Steelwrist X04 on our Kubota KX033. So we're going to go over all the good things and some of the bad things that I've found through my experience using this tool through all sorts of work that we do here at our business. So before we dive in here real quick, I just want to explain what a tilt rotator is for any of you that might be new or have never seen this before. These attachments mainly have come from Europe and they're extremely popular over there. They're becoming more popular here in the US as we speak. But basically everything from the stick of this excavator down is going to be considered the tilt rotator. So about this section right here. That is comprised of a tilt cylinder, so this allows you to tilt 45 degrees left to right. And then on the back side here we have a hydraulic motor that allows this thing to swivel completely 360 degrees around. So that allows you to do a lot of really complex digging and stuff that you're just not able to do with a standard excavator. So the first thing I want to talk about, this is going to be part of the pro section. You can see I have a ton of different attachments here. We call them work tools. So every tool has a different job. And you may be wondering how we attach these work tools to the excavator. That's a really nice aspect of adding on a tilt rotator here is going to be the quick coupler. So I'll show you how that works. So in the cab here, we're going to have our steel wrist controls. I'll talk about that more in a minute. But over to my right, I have this switch. When I flip that, it's going to tell me that the tilt rotator is getting ready to make a tool change. On the back of this joystick right here, we're going to have a button. When I press that button, a safety pin will come out. You'll see a little red pin that comes out showing you that your quick coupler is open. The quick coupler pins will retract, and then I'm able to drop the work tool. When we want to add our attachment back on, we're going to flip this switch. We're going to hit that button again. You'll see the red safety pulls itself in, and the tool is now connected to the excavator, and you're ready to dig. I didn't even have to get out of the cab to do that. So you can see I currently have my grading bucket on there. So if I wanted to switch this tool out, just as easily as flipping a switch, I can disconnect from that. Say we want to pick up our pallet forks here. Push the button again. And now I have a set of pallet forks attached if I want to move some pallets around. It's that easy and it takes a matter of seconds. Again, we want to make a switch. And I want to put on my grapple over here. Press that button again. And now I have the grapple hooked up, ready to go. So as you can see, that hydraulic quick coupler is extremely handy for swapping back and forth between all your different work tools. Whenever we go out to a site, I'm always bringing multiple tools with us. What's cool about Steelwrist and most of the other tilt rotator manufacturers is they have all moved to what's called Open S platform. So this type of quick coupler here, this is called an S40 quick coupler. So that means these are 40 millimeter pins, and every S40 coupler is the same. So I chose the S40 coupler for our machine. It fit its size the best. It's the right size coupler for the machine. So every single one of our attachments have the S40 coupler, and that is universal across all the manufacturers now with that Open S platform, and that is really, really handy. So in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons for getting a tilt rotator is the ability to dig from any angle. Now that becomes really important on sites that are really tight, where you have to work around things, or you need to grade and match a grade. So you can see here, I'll idle up a little bit. If I wanted to get up close to the edge of this patio and pull away this stone, I can match the angle of that perfectly, and I can follow that angle. And what this does is this eliminates so much handwork. I could get in here and I could dump material up against the edge of this. I can even come around the backside here and I can dig out the backside. Say I wanted to pull some of this grass out of here. I don't want that grass. We dig up against the backside, we can pull that out. I'm not leaving any corners missed. If I wanted to reach around that back corner, if I had enough reach, we'll just scoot our way on over here and I could dig around that back corner. But I can match that grade. We're not sitting on a perfectly flat incline here. So if I want to grade or make an adjustment, I could tilt that bucket down. I could dig with one side of the bucket, or I could dig with the other side of the bucket and make myself a nice little V trench here. This is great if you're wanting to put in drainage swales or put things in at a slope. And then for finishing, I can match the existing grade of something and make it really nice and finished. So that is a huge reason why we wanted a tilt rotator. It cuts down on the hand labor so much because you can reach so many different locations and angles. And part of that is I don't need to reposition this machine as often. I'm doing all the repositioning with the bucket. So if I took a scoop from the trailer and like I said, I want to dump into here, I can do that. I can scoop backwards. I can dump from the side. And that's just really handy. You can't do that with a regular excavator without having to reposition or put the bucket on backwards. This allows you to do all of that from one position, just using the machine and the joysticks to make that happen. So, those of you curious may notice the mount on the stick of my excavator for a thumb, and that's a big complaint that a lot of people have when they're looking at tilt rotators, is they say, I'm going to lose my thumb. That's a big thing for me. I do a lot of picking up material. Now this is an option. It doesn't come with the machine standard, but on the back side, the tilt rotator here, you'll see this little thing. That's called the integrated gripper. So this is an attachment that goes right in there. You can see it on the back. And these are two little fingers that are operational. Now this doesn't fully replace a thumb, I will say that, but where it lacks in the size, I can pick up from any angle now, and I can be really gentle. So if I wanted to pick up this unilock block right here, I can pick it up. I could set it down at whatever angle I want. So say I want to pick up another one here. I can stack those on top of each other. Grab whatever I need and place it wherever I want. And you can be really delicate with this, and you get the added benefit of the tilt and the rotate, so you can do things like stack that up at an angle. You can't do that with a thumb. So do I miss my thumb? In some cases, yes. The gripper doesn't have the same gripping strength as a thumb, but overall, the added level of feel and touch and angle that I get, where I can do things like that. I can scoop up, there's this rock right here, so I can go ahead, grab that. Sometimes it's a little clumsy, especially with smaller items, but you can see I've got this little rock right here. And you can pick up some seriously heavy things with this gripper. But Do I miss my thumb? I would say overall, not really, because this little gripper has made up for it. So I just want to come back to attachments real quick. I mean, any attachments are available for any excavator, but having that quick coupler and the ability to tilt and rotate those different buckets and things, I have a ton of different attachments, from digging buckets for trenching. We have toothed digging buckets for ripping up hard soil and rocks. We have a ripper here. We have a big grapple, so this is great for picking up big rocks and logs. This is our Rotastar screening bucket. It's really good for screening soil. That brings me to hydraulic connections. So you see the Rotastar here and the grapple have hydraulic connections, but on my excavator, I only have single auxiliary hydraulics, which are used to power the Steelwrist itself. Well, down here on the Steelwrist, we have 2 integrated hydraulic connections. So that does run off of the gripper circuit. So if we come back here, we have this little valve. Same on these factory machines, you'll generally have a valve to switch between the thumb and some other hydraulic attachment. So you'll turn this, that will disable your gripper, and now your gripper control is used to power these auxiliary hydraulics for things like the grapple and the Rotastar here. And as far as the digging buckets go here, my favorite bucket, the one that we use most often, is this 43-inch smooth grading bucket, so no teeth. And what's interesting about the European, or in this case Swedish style buckets, you're going to notice that they slope up really quickly in the back, and it doesn't look like they have a lot of capacity, especially because the sidewall here is kind of cut out. And if you look from the side, they really kind of curve in immediately. This is all done to help when you're using that tilt and rotate, so you can get up in corners and things, and you can scoop, and really a lot of this cutout here so you can dig under utilities and things. It may seem weird at first seeing these buckets and seeing how weird they look, especially that trenching bucket, how long it is, and it doesn't look like it holds a lot of volume. Same with the digging bucket. All of this design is really intentional, and after you've used these buckets for a while, you start to really like them. And now I don't see myself ever going back to a standard North American style bucket. This is just such a better way. And you see all of the buckets have these little hooks here, so you can hook this attachment. I can carry both of these 2 buckets with that bucket, just hooking under those little fingers, so I can carry a lot of tools all at once. It's really handy. Quickly, I want to talk about the joysticks here. So this could be a pro or a con, depending on how you look at it. So when you get a tilt rotator installed, they are going to swap out your factory joysticks. For these ones, they have a ton of different buttons and rollers on the front. And then on the back here, you can see even more buttons and rollers on both of them. And all of these different buttons and rollers are going to be what controls your tilt and rotate. So on my left stick here, this is going to be my rotate. This is going to be my tilt. And on the back here, I have another roller that is my gripper, and that's also my auxiliary hydraulics. So they are going to replace your factory joysticks with these. I find that they are much more comfortable. I really like these joysticks. After working all day, you don't get weird feelings in your hands. Everything is really well laid out, and I really like that. It is a lot to get used to, though. For someone that is new to these machines, it may take a bit of getting used to. Now that I've gone over a pretty good sized list of positives, I do want to talk about a couple of the negative things that you're going to have when you mount a tilt rotator to your excavator. The first most important thing is going to be a bit of a loss of breakout force. So on all excavators you have breakout force, and that's the amount of power that that bucket can kind of tear through the ground with. And most machines have a rating. You're adding at least 12 inches here to the end of the stick that bucket cylinder has to push against, and you're decreasing your leverage basically. So you're not going to have that same ripping power that you would without a tilt rotator. Now on a smaller machine like our 3-ton here, this tilt rotator is called a direct fit unit. So it is pinned onto this stick all the time. You could take it off by pulling the pins out, but I don't have a coupler to run these buckets otherwise. So the tilt rotator stays on the machine all the time. I can't take it off. We don't do a lot of heavy digging, so ripping through hard ground. I have things like rippers. I change buckets depending on use case. I don't find that it affects me too much. Using the bigger attachments like the Rotastar, the grapple, or the pallet forks, not only do you have this extra length, you also have some extra weight. The tilt rotator itself weighs something. That's offset by replacing the thumb, so we took off some weight to add some weight. But you'll notice on a smaller machine like this, you might get a little tippy depending on what attachment you're using. That's where being a skilled operator is really important. You really need to know your machine and know when it feels like it's going to tip, and set yourself up so that you can dig comfortably either over the blade or whatever it may be. When we purchased our tilt rotator, we were offered a counterweight. After putting on all the different attachments, even the Rotastar, I was pleased with the performance and how the 33 handled the weight, so I opted not to put that counterweight on. You may want to put that counterweight on, it just depends. I didn't want to add the extra 6 inches, being that we dig in such confined environments. That's a big pro of the tilt rotator, that allows us to dig in places you wouldn't normally be able to, so I didn't want that extra weight. So another con is going to be, I wouldn't say the bulkiness, but the width of this unit. You have this tilt cylinder hanging off the side that adds a bit of width. So for trenching, we have an 18-inch trenching bucket. You could go smaller than that, but you're only able to dig as deep as the trenching bucket is, because the rest of this tilt rotator unit won't fit in that trench. So 18 inches is about the smallest I'd like to go. Once you get down into that trench, you do have to worry about this and watch this. You don't want to be ramming this into stuff. Along with that is just, you have a bunch of exposed hydraulics here, and then under this plate is a bunch of electronics. So you can't put this thing underwater. It is waterproof, but you're not going to want to submerge it. And you do need to be careful when you're working in the woods or something around roots or sticks. There's a lot of little grease lines, hydraulic lines, and electric lines that you don't want to tear out. So you do need to be mindful of those things. Like I said about exposed hydraulic lines, this right here is a hose that I have broken before, especially when I'm trenching. If you're trying to dig a deeper hole than it is long, I snapped this line off right here, because that, as you curl out, this is the first thing that's going to hit the ground. So again, you do need to be mindful of kind of where everything is placed. You don't want to be breaking hydraulic lines or anything like that. So as you can see by some of the battle scars on this hydraulic cylinder and guard, it's another thing you got to watch out for. Since that whole tilt rotator assembly adds height to your bucket can hit the machine now in multiple areas, especially the pallet forks. Those are really dangerous, because as you curl those in all the way, you have a real risk of hitting the boom and the stick. But if you have an inexperienced operator and they're not paying attention, and say they're either curling in too much or swiveling the bucket around while it's at a weird angle, you can definitely hit the machine and tear off hydraulic lines, or just cause damage to either the machine or the tilt rotator. So that's something you really need to be mindful of. And for someone that's not experienced with that, or experienced with those controls, you really have to take it slow and get some hours under your belt, so that you understand in what areas you might have a situation where you're going to hit into the machine, and watch out for that. So on to another con of adding a tilt rotator. All tilt rotators are going to add some computers. So you see I have 2 computers down here that help to control the tilt rotator itself. And then up here we have an additional screen, and that's how you basically control all aspects of the tilt rotator. So there is an app for this too, which I found is really useful. But this is a whole nother set of electronics that's getting added to your machine. There's troubleshooting error codes and things. I have had a couple issues in the winter with low voltage, It was causing my quick attach not to work properly. Luckily, Steelwrist has really good customer service. I was able to call them up on the phone, and they were actually able to adjust the operating voltage on the computers right over the phone. So that is nice that they can connect through an app and make those changes for you. But you are going to have more electronic systems here in the cab. There's a ton of extra wires and things that run up in under the seat and everything. So that's something to be mindful of, especially if you have like mice and things getting into your machine. Another con here is going to be added maintenance. So there are a ton of moving parts on this tilt rotator, as you can imagine. So we're adding a lot of extra grease fittings, a bunch for the gripper, a bunch for the quick connect, the pivots, the actual swivel motor itself, and then all the tilt functions. So we opted to go with a central lubrication system. So you can see all these grease lines. Now that takes care of about 80% of the main moving parts on the tilt rotator. So you come up here and there is a grease manifold. You can see all those grease lines, and that's one central grease point at the bottom that you grease. So there is a bit of added maintenance that you need to watch out for that is going to add some time to your day when you're greasing the machine. And now you do have a bunch of extra wear points. You have 2 additional swivels here that are going to wear, the actual rotate itself. So things to be mindful of. That's why I generally don't recommend people putting jackhammers or things that are super high impact on a tilt rotator. It's just going to wear it out more often. Like I said, we have 1,330 hours and I haven't had any maintenance concerns. We did have one leak in the beginning that was covered under warranty, but otherwise it's been really good. But that is a very complex thing that you're adding to the end of your excavator there that has a lot of moving parts. So you do want to be mindful of that, and that is an added cost and maintenance item. So the last con I really need to talk about is going to be that learning curve. If you're an experienced owner operator that really cares for their machine and looks out for their stuff, it shouldn't be too bad. I was able to pick this thing up in a small amount of hours, really. I was proficient, I'd say, within 10 hours, and now with 1,300, it's like second nature. It's like using my fingers. And that's what it feels like. It feels like I've turned my excavator into a hand, and that's why they call it a steel wrist. I've turned my excavator into something just fantastic. But if you have inexperienced employees, or if you have employees that aren't so careful with the machines, you can really cause a lot of damage to either the machine itself or the tilt rotator. So you really do need to be mindful of that. And maybe it's a good idea just to shut the auxiliaries off, dig with it as a normal excavator, and know your bounds and things and limits, and then slowly, add tilt, add rotate, and go from there. I've found that sometimes, I guess this could be considered a con, I'm actually using the tilt rotator a little more than I should be. I'm doing things that normally with a regular excavator, since I don't have the option to tilt or rotate, I would either push sideways with the bucket or do whatever. I almost overcomplicate sometimes the digging situation. I might be twisting the bucket more excessively than I should be, when I don't need to be necessarily doing that. But that's, I guess that's a small con. Something that people ask me all the time, and I will bring up now, is the cost. That could be a con for some of you. To us, it was an investment opportunity. We wanted to invest in the efficiency of our excavator. Ever since putting this thing on, it has made the excavator so much more of a versatile tool. We purchased this in January of 2022, so we're going to be coming up on 4 years with this unit. So in January of 2022, the X04 Tiltrotator with the gripper cassette and the central lubrication that did add a little extra cost was $21,474. Plus, we had to pay for someone to install it. Luckily enough, we are close to Steelwrist in Connecticut, and they installed it for us. That added another $3,000. So the whopping total cost for just the X04 Tiltrotator, not counting any of these attachments, was $24,474. Some of you might be rolling over right now because that's about half the cost of the excavator itself, not including attachments. I believe all in, we're looking at like $50,000 with all the attachments. I see it as an investment. I wouldn't do it any other way. If I was getting another machine, you're gonna bet I'm gonna have another Steelwrist on it. They've been fantastic for service, after service support, or after sales support. It's just a really quality product, and it has made my excavator so much more versatile. I could never go back to a standard excavator. If you're doing just hard digging all day, if you're just digging trenches or hammering rock or whatever, it might not be for you. We're a landscape company. We do a lot of hardscaping projects. I need to dig up against foundations, decks, pools. I need to be as tight fitting and just efficient as possible. We're a two-man crew. That's all that we have. So I needed to add the role of a ground guy without having a ground guy. So this does that for me. I can reach in all those corners, and I can eliminate like 90% of the handwork. We might have to do a little shovel cleanup, but this thing can handle the rest, and that has been a huge thing for us. So in closing, I'm in support of this thing. What do you guys think? Have any of you been in the market for one of these? Are you curious? Have you wanted to test one out? Do you not like it? Maybe you have one. I want to hear down below, what do you think about these things? If you are interested in purchasing one of these, I would highly recommend A&D Equipment. That's who we bought our Steelwrist and all these wonderful attachments through. They are some of the best people to work with. I'm not sponsored by them. They don't pay me a dime. We had to pay full price for all this stuff. I just like them that much. Their service is fantastic. Their communication is great. They're a small family-run company. So if you're interested in a Steelwrist, a Rotastar, they're really big on these. They gave me the opportunity to demo a Steelwrist and a Rotastar and all the different attachments, and that's what sold us. They still do that. So if you're interested, I'm gonna drop their information down below. Please go check them out if you have any interest in this stuff. They are fantastic to work with, and you might find yourself going home with a tilt rotator after you see them. So it is what it is. But I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little quick review, the pros and cons. I think the pros far outweigh the cons on this attachment, and I wouldn't change a thing. But I want to thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Have a good rest of the day.